Good morning, everyone. We're going to bring the meeting of the Board of Supervisors and the Redevelopment Authority to order. Today is Thursday, June 4th, 2020. It is just 8:30 a.m. We're in the Community Center at the Sierra Room at 851 East William Street. I usually say, well, you can see us on cable as well. I think it's on channel 191 if you get Charter Cable. I'm told that there was an equipment failure last night, so we will not be on cable, but all the internet and social media outlets will be live this morning. So I apologize that we're not going to be on cable. And let me just read the notice on the hearing here so that we all know what we're doing, because it's a little difficult to do these things by virtually. It's hard to do it. Said the state of Nevada and Carson City are currently in a declared state of emergency in response to the global pandemic caused by the coronavirus COVID-19 infections disease outbreak. In accordance with the Governor's Declaration of Emergency Directive 006, which has suspended the provisions of NRS 241020, requiring the designation of a physical location for meetings of public bodies where members of the public are permitted to attend and participate. Public meetings in Carson City will not have a physical location open to the public until such time as this directive is removed. Hopefully we're going to move through these issues on the coronavirus and other things so that we can go back to normal, but we're going to do it. We try our very best to make sure that everything is done transparently and everybody has a chance to speak. But I won't kid everybody, it's a little difficult when you're dealing with, talking on TV and it's just not the same as in person. So I think all of us up here on the board are looking forward to getting back to that when we can do that. Okay. Can we now call on our good friend, the Rock and Rev, Ken Haskins of the First Christian Church, to get us started? Ken, how are you doing? How's your flock doing out there? Good.
Do you want a roll call?
Was that right? Oh, I got to do a roll call first. While we're standing, do a roll call.
Supervisor Giomi? Supervisor Bankowski? Here. Supervisor Bagwell? Here. Supervisor Barrett? Here. Mayor Kroll?
Here.
A quorum's present.
We're standing, so that's all right. How's that? So your dad moved in with you?
Yeah, and we got him his recliner, his big screen TV, and we're learning to love old westerns.
Who doesn't love an old?
Who doesn't love? I agree with who doesn't love all westerns.
Yeah, a little more variety, please. But he's doing well.
Well, you tell him my favorite movie is Shane of all time.
I've seen it probably a few times.
Yeah. All right.
Let's pray.
Get us started. Thanks, Ken.
Loving Heavenly Father, times like these, I'm reminded of the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, who taught us that darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. And hatred cannot drive out hatred, only love can do that. And we thank you that you are light, and in you there is no darkness, and you are love. And I pray that you fill our hearts with both a desire for the light of your truth and also the love that we can have and share with one another. And Father, we can't do everything, but we can do something. So I just pray you be with each one of us. Be with our mayor today and the supervisors, and help them to see clearly the issues before them. Grant them the wisdom that comes from you, and may their decisions prove to be beneficial to all who call Carson City home. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Well said, Ken. Thank you. All right. Would you please, wherever you are, this is difficult, if you can have an American flag, turn and stand, put your arm over your heart and face the American flag. If you don't have an American flag, please stand, put your arm over your heart, and try and look towards where you last saw the American flag. So join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we'll now move on to public comment. This is item 5 on the agenda. Who do we have on? We've got the written comment. We have everybody's written comments. If you send in written comments, they're all on part of the record. Are there anybody who wants to verbally participate in public comment? Desi, do we have anybody back there?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a few callers this morning.
Okay.
Caller, it is your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record. Caller, it is your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
This is Rob Pizell with the Lyon County Community Development Department, here to speak on item 25A.
Say again, who is it? Rob Pizell. Oh, Rob. Okay, go, Rob. For 25A, is that what you're
Yes,
talking? Go.
that's correct. The Lyon County has been working with the Carson City Community Development Department, the code enforcement officers, and the planning department, as well as the Nevada Department of Environmental Protection with regards to the Tahoe Western Asphalt facility and the complaints received with regards to emissions and odors. In May, the Board of County Commissioners voted to forward a letter alerting the Carson City Board of Supervisors about the complaints.
The letter is part of the
Lyon
record,
County has
Rob.
received.
Just so you know,
Okay.
the record has your letter from the Lyon County Commissioners is part of our record. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but we need to let everybody know that we appreciate getting communications from our sister counties. Go ahead.
Basically, I'm here to answer any questions that you have. Again, we are continuing to monitor the situation with your folks as well as the state folks.
Got any solutions?
I'm thinking the eastern end of Lyon County, but not really.
I mean, on a serious side, Rob, I really is. Do you have any suggestions as to how do you resolve this, or just let me ask it like that?
I do not.
Okay.
Air quality control is not my area of expertise. The problem I've expressed to a number of the people complaining on the Lyon County side is Carson City regulates land use on the Carson City side, Lyon County the same on the Lyon County side, and then the state regulates air quality. The problem is that the state statutes with regards to air quality, particularly odors, are quite vague. So all three of us are trying to work together to come to some sort of solution. And we also look to any recommendations from the elected officials in this regard as well.
Okay, Rob. We appreciate you calling in here and being part of the process. I'd ask if you could, you probably will, kind of keep an eye on us through the internet because we don't have cable this morning. And then, if you got questions, call in, okay?
Will do. I've got our board is meeting at 9 o'clock, so I was wondering how this was going to work, but I will check back in to make sure, just in case there are any questions you have of us as well.
Okay. Tell Jeff Page he writes pretty well.
Actually, I wrote that for him, but yeah, I'll tell him that.
Tell Jeff Page he needs help. All right, good enough. Any other public comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go.
Caller, it is your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
Good morning, Mayor and Board. For the record, Maurice White.
Good morning.
Today, I comment on agenda item 14C, the diesel tax. I have great concerns about the manner this item comes to this body. As you know, in 2016, Carson City voters rejected Carson City Question 1. Carson City Question 1 did in fact include a diesel tax as defined in the special fuels definition. Carson City voters by 65% rejected Carson City Question 1, including the diesel tax. Put another way, 65% of Carson City voters told you that fixing Carson City roads was not their top priority. Yet today, you are set to circumvent the voice of Carson City voters. Yes, I am aware the legislature has allowed you to do this. Yes, your actions here today are legal, but it is wrong to ignore the voice of Carson City voters. Carson City voters said no to a diesel tax. Changing the name and jiggling numbers does not change that fact. This action tears at the very fabric of our nation. At the very least, you should allow Carson City voters the opportunity to again reject this diesel tax before you impose it. I ask you today to honor the Carson City voters' voice and remove this item 14C from today's agenda. Mr. Mayor, I also must express my dismay regarding comments made during discussion about this diesel tax at your last meeting on May 21. Supervisors Brad Bonkowski and John Barrett stated that if voters reject this diesel tax in 2022, they would return to chastise voters. I am a voter, and I am here to chastise you today. Your arrogance is sickening. To make such a comment not only tears at the very fabric of our nation, but you turn your back to the founders of our great nation. I will celebrate the day you two leave this honorable body and our community. Mr. Mayor, as always, thank you for the time today and your patience and understanding of my beliefs. Thank you.
All right. Any other public comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Caller, it is your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
This is Ron Bratch. I'm a candidate for supervisor, Ward 4. I don't think I can say it any better than Mo White. Thank you for calling in, Mo White. I can't believe we're even bringing this in for a second reading with everything going on. And it's almost like you're trying to do things under the cover of the COVID-19 and the riots across our country. I believe this needs to be taken off the agenda, just like Mo White proposed. And I can't believe you even have further discussion. So with that, ditto Mo White. I'm 100% with what he said. And I believe this needs to come off.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Other public comment?
Final public comment, Mr. Mayor.
Say that again, please.
This is the final public comment.
The one we just heard, or you got one more?
This one right now. Caller,
good.
it is
Go.
your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
I'm on hold now. I just spoke. I got to follow Mo White, so all I had to really.
Who was that? Oh, Ron, that, okay. All right. All right. Any other public comment?
That is all public comment, Mr. Mayor.
All right. As usual, we usually take public comment as we go through the items, but with where we are and what I read into the record for what we've got to do on the COVID-19 stuff, we'll just take public comment at the beginning and the end. I apologize for that. It's something we got to do. We always kind of like to get people's input as we go through it. It's a little easier for the community to express their comments as well, but that's not in the cards this morning. Okay, let's take up item number 6, possible approval of the minutes of May 7th, 2020. Everybody had a chance to read those? If everybody has, motion's in order.
I move to approve the minutes of the Carson City Board of Supervisors for May 7th, 2020 as presented.
There's a motion and a second on the motion discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Nay, signify by saying nay. No? No no's, passes unanimous. Okay, let's take up item 7, possible adoption of the agenda. Any member of the board want to change anything on the agenda? Or we could actually take things off the consent agenda now so we can get it organized. Anybody want changes pulled?
Yes, Mayor, if we can.
You bet.
10E.
10E, we'll pull 10E from the consent agenda. I know that's coming up here in a second, but just so we know. Okay, 10E. Pull. Anybody else? Any other changes to the agenda that we want to do, that you want to do? I don't see anybody and I don't hear anybody. So unless there's an objection, we will adopt it. We will take the agenda as, we'll adopt the agenda as published with the exception of 11B, or 11 Echo rather, which we will pull for 10E, rather, excuse me, 10E. We'll keep it for another session. Okay, and,
Just pull for discussion.
oh, pull, okay, fine, that's good. All right, pull for discussion. All right, let's go then, let's take up the consent agenda. Can we have a motion on the consent agenda with the exception of 10 Echo?
I move to approve the consent agenda as published with the exception of 10E.
There's a motion in a couple seconds. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you. All right. Let's take up now item number 8, community development from the planning folks. This is 8 Alpha. This is possible discussion regarding a request for historical tax deferment on property located at.
10E. On 10E.
Oh, I got it at 10E. Hang on a minute. I'm going through it. Just going to pull it when we got there. All right, let's take up 10E. You'd think I'd get better at this after 11 years.
It's hard trying to do it online and.
All right, good morning. How we doing?
Good.
What's going on, Andy?
Andy Hummel, wastewater utility manager for the record. This item, we're asking for some additional funds to get through the end of the year on our bleach purchases, namely for the wastewater treatment plant. We share that bleach 3 ways throughout the year. The largest buyer by far is the wastewater treatment plant, and then every couple of weeks we send part of a load up to the Quill treatment plant for the water system, and then occasionally the pool gets some. But at the wastewater treatment plant, we're getting a full tanker basically every week, so we use quite a bit of it. The second edition, we thought when we came back in March that we were going to be able to reduce our usage with the warmer temperatures. That didn't happen until about mid-May when we were finally able to turn that usage down. Basically, the bleach helps control our fecal coliform numbers in the water that we put out. The other thing that we've done with our bleach supplier to help that usage cost, they're able to supply us 2 different types of bleach. The one at the $1.14 and change cost is what we need at Quill. For the water treatment side, it's a little bit better quality. We're able to use a little bit lower quality that saves us about 7 cents a gallon. So that we've started, every tanker that just comes to the wastewater plant, make sure it's that one so that we're saving some money there. And then also we're looking at in the future as our joiner contract is up, what options do we have? Are there other contracts out there that we can go off that we might be able to save some money, things like that?
All right. I think we have some questions up here. Supervisor Bunkowski, go.
No, Andy addressed all my questions in his presentation.
Anybody else? Questions of Andy? Okay, I don't see any. We'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the purchase increase as requested.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on agenda item 10 Echo. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried, unanimous. Okay, thank you very much, Andy. Good for you, too. You know what I got is I got one of those little light things, a scanner. You seen those? A little wand. It's got a, what is it? It's got a different light in it. It's got UV light. I don't know if they really work, but it's going to see if maybe I'll bring it and set it up there on the table. But
Yeah, that is another option that we are actively looking at. That's used pretty heavily in the water industry.
good.
And there is some indications we might be able to use it here. We've got a contract coming into place July 1 with Stantec, just a on-call services, small one. We're asking them to investigate whether that would be a future possibility. Yeah.
Everybody get that? Very good. All right, thank you. All right. Let's now do we take up the rest on the consent, right?
We did already.
Did already. 12A. Okay, let's go to Let's go to 12A, regular agenda. 12A is a discussion of possible action regarding the appointment of one member to the Carson City Audit Committee for a term that expires December 31st, 2021. Are there any disclosures? Supervisor Giomi.
Thank you. NRS 281A-420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment as an employee at Nevada Health Centers, I work with Margie Molina, who's the candidate for the audit committee position. I do not supervise her, and she does not supervise me, and in fact, we work in different departments. I make this disclosure for full transparency, but because I do not have any commitment to Ms. Molina in a private capacity, I do not have a disqualifying conflict and will be voting on this matter.
Okay. Any other disclosures? I don't see any. Okay. Is it Margie or Margaret? What do you go by?
I go by Margie.
Margie? Margie? Okay. We want to thank you for applying to sit on the audit committee. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, and I know you're the only one, so.
So I've heard.
But I
yes.
think it's important for everybody to see who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you want to do on the board, on the audit committee. Just give us the highlights.
Okay. I've been an accountant for over 40 years. That's
Oh, boy.
scary, but
I thought I was long being an attorney, but you're not, you haven't beat me yet, but you're close.
oh no. So I love accounting. I took a break in 1999. I went to massage school and opened my own business right over here in the building behind us where the medical building and welfare was. So that was like the best thing I've ever done in my life. I did it for 13 years, ran my own business, loved doing massage. It was just such a healing both for the clients and me. I had 2 back surgeries in 2011 and could no longer do it. So I actually lived in Dayton the whole time I was here, moved back to California to help my sister. She had cancer, came back in 2016 and would not move from Carson City ever. I love this place. I just thought if there was any way I could help in any way, because I love this city so much, was when Stacy told me about the position, I was excited about it.
Okay. Oh, I'm glad you're excited about it, and we're glad that you filed. And I was going to say it's an interesting connection between massage and audit, but now that I think about it, there is a connection. So, good.
Yeah,
All right.
she massages numbers, so.
Oh, hey.
No? Oh, no. Okay,
No,
never mind.
no. Black and white, black and red, I should say.
There's no creative accounting over there, I guess.
No creative accounting, no.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions to Margie? We'll entertain a motion to appoint Margie to.
I'll do it.
Go.
You don't mind? You mind? I move to appoint Margie Molina to serve on the Carson City Audit Committee for a term that expires on December 31, 2021.
There's a motion and a couple seconds on the motion discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed nay.
Welcome
right.
to the team.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're a great group. You really will like it.
I really think I will. I love auditing. That, out of accounting, that has always been my favorite. Yeah, it is still on. I did audits for retired and senior volunteer program here in Carson with Janice Ayers for 5 years. And then also in San Diego Gas and Electric, I was an internal auditor. So I really love that piece. So thank you so much.
Good, thank you. All right. Let's see here then. Let's take up item 13. This is for the Roop Street Fiber Optic Project by Edge Communications, maybe, for a total not to exceed $302,237.50. Carol, you want us to stay there and, oh, there's, okay, just stand. That's all right. There you go. All right, tell us what's going on here, when you get a chance.
Good morning, Board.
What are you doing, sitting on the ground?
Thank you.
That's dedication.
Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director for the record. So we had this item in front of you last meeting. At that point, we weren't going to include the fiber connection to the Fire Station 52 training facility. There was discussion at the board. You directed us to come back and use some of that break fix account funding. So we have done that. There will be the connection to the training facility there. And so that's really the change with this project.
Good, okay. Questions of Either Dan or Carol? I don't see any. It's good. All right, we'll take a motion.
I move to award the contract and to include the connection to the training facility.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion in a couple seconds. On the motion, discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried, unanimous. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's see. Let's now take up 13 Bravo. This is A&K Earth Movers. And Carol, I'll just read this out. This is discussion whether A&K Earth Movers is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder pursuant to NRS Chapter 338, and whether to award contract number 193-001-63 for the Pete Livermore Parking Lot Reconstruction Project for a total not to exceed $610,480. Did I get that right, Carol?
You got it.
All right. You write it out for me just right. Okay. Go. Dan, you doing this? All right.
Yes, sir. Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director for the record. This is reconstruction of that parking lot. I think everybody in this room knows that it could use some attention, probably long overdue. So we'll be reconstructing the entire parking lot. There'll also be some other drainage type, erosion control type features with the project that will help with future maintenance. We broke it out into a base bid with a bid all because, we knew budget would be tight. Prices came in pretty good. We have awarded we're recommending to award the bid all. It does, to make the budget work, we are lowering the contingency, which I wanted to point out on this. It's about 5%. And the reason why we feel comfortable, it's a parking lot. It's not our typical road where you have a bunch of unknowns with underground utilities or groundwater or poor soil conditions. We're not getting into that with this project. We've done a lot of research. We've sent our construction management team out there as well as, double and triple checked our quantities, and everything checks out. We feel comfortable awarding with this amount of contingency.
And if it doesn't happen, then what?
As far as if we run out of money?
If we go over 5%.
Yeah, so there's basically two options. One, there's a couple items that we could possibly cut out that, obviously we want to keep them in, but that could happen. And then, or we would have to, come back to the board essentially and ask for more money, which we obviously do not want to do. But I think, again, we've done a lot of investigation here and we all feel really comfortable with it.
All right. Who's that? Stacy? Or go.
Dan, I just wanted to ask you, so evaluating the contingency drop from the normal to 5%, and I'm kind of comparing that to the engineer's estimate that was off by like a third. So I'm just, unless I misread that, I think the engineer's estimate was significantly less than what it came in at. So I guess I just wanted to reiterate or have you reiterate that you are comfortable with that 5% and what thoughts you have on why that engineer's estimate was so far off.
So I think the engineer's estimate was for the base bid. So it does look like it was a little bit off. As far as, the work that we do, so with this project, there's just, kind of like what I spoke about earlier, there's just not a lot of unknowns with it. Essentially they're gonna, just to take you kind of through the sequencing of work, they're gonna pulverize the existing pavement. They're gonna recycle that product and use it as base material for the new parking lot. So the risk with that, there's a little grading, but again, you're not getting into any underground utilities really with that. So there's just not a lot of unknowns there. We did do a geotech report, so we know kind of, the soils that are out there. If we didn't do that, maybe we'd be a little less likely to be comfortable with it. Then they'll come back in, they'll put the recycled base down, and then they'll come back with 3 inches of asphalt on top. And there is some, as I mentioned, some erosion control mechanisms that we put in this project on the south side or the east side of the parking lot. We have some erosion that gets on the pavement. So there's a channel there that we're going to cut in to help with, capturing that sediment. Again, not a lot of risk there. It's not a real deep channel by any means. And then kind of the last part of the project will be striping, which of course, again, another very low risk item. We also have a good, not that this, I'll point it out, this contractor, we've done past projects with them. They've proven themselves to do a good job. So I think that goes and is important to note as well. So overall, and like I said, we sent, this is not a typical thing that we do, nor will it be in the future. unless we feel very comfortable with it. And like I said, we sent our staff out there to do further investigation. We had our design team double check the quantities, because that's where you may get burned too before, if you're off on a quantity, and everything checks out really well. So, yep.
Other questions? Brad, Supervisor Bunkowski.
To clarify, the engineer's estimate that was referred to as 460,000, the base bid amount was 387,000. I think, Stacy, you were adding the bid alternate in there, and that's why it looks like it's off when it's not.
Further questions of either Carol or Dan? I don't see any motions in order.
I move to award contract number 193-00163 is presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you. All right, let's take up item 14 alpha. Carol, I'll do it. If you have this one? Oh, this, yeah, right, okay, all right. All right, let's take up 14 alpha. Mr. Cooley, how are you this morning?
Doing good.
Tell us what's going on.
Well, this is we're coming to an end of a 14-year agreement, interlocal agreement with Lyon County to accept their sludge, our wastewater sludge at our landfill. And so it's basically renewing it for another 10 years. We cleaned up some language. The only major changes are extending the time frame for another 10 years, cleaning up the start and end date to where it's going to start and end in a fiscal year as opposed to in December, and changing the fee that the minimum fee we're going to charge them. Instead of $10 a ton, take it up to the in-county minimum of $24 a ton. So that's the ins and outs. Questions?
I didn't hear the last part.
We increased the fees from $10 a ton, was in the old agreement, up to the $24 a ton, which is the in-county minimum right now for waste.
I got it. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't.
No, that's good.
It's hard to run these meetings. All right, who's up? Brad, Supervisor Bunkowski.
So Rick, is it my understanding, it wasn't clear in the material we got, that the old interlocal contract did not have a provision for increases?
Correct. It was a flat $10. The new agreement
Agreement
does.
does.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the new agreement is, and I'm hoping to do this before too long, but we do a rate study, we increase our rates, that $24 will go up to the new in-county minimum.
Supervisor Bagwell.
Good morning.
Morning.
Haven't seen you in a while, so good morning. So is there a regulatory condition around this type of waste?
Yes, we do not accept out-of-county industrial waste without exceptions, and so that's another reason why we have this interlocal agreement. This is industrial waste. There are federal regulations around it for metals, testing of metals and whatnot, that Lyon County is providing and giving us quarterly reports to make sure that we follow those federal regulations to be able to accept this waste.
So that kind of goes with something. So is this agreement, do you think it covers that they have to comply with the federal and we don't take it
Yes,
without the reports, and you think it's covered in here?
yes.
Because I just want to make sure if the federal government changes a regulation in the 10 years, I'm not forced to take it under today's conditions.
No, and that's why it's in there that they need to follow the federal regulations, and they provide those reports to us on a quarterly basis. So if those limits drop, which they do from time to time, it'll be covered in the testing that they perform.
Okay. Maybe I just missed it. But you're comfortable it's in there?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, I want to make sure that we don't, 5 years into the agreement, uh-oh.
Right. And
Now
that's.
now I have to,
We didn't make any holistic changes to this agreement. Really, it was some of the legalese we cleaned up, and the pricing and the duration is the only things that really changed from last time.
You want a minute?
yeah, I was just looking at it really quick to see if I could find
Do you mind if I ask a quick question while you're looking?
Yeah.
Sorry. Rick, is there also a benefit for us for this? I mean, are we able to use this to create cells and compartmentalize and fill, or is it not able, is it quality not such that it can be used for that?
No, it goes right into our MSW, because it comes in, one of the tests they gotta perform is a paint filter test to make sure there's not an excessive amount of liquids in it. So it goes into our commercial MSW, which is where all of waste management
Right.
stuff, all the gooey stuff goes anyway, and it's where our sludge goes. Where,
Okay.
yeah, there's no.
So you can't really use it for fill or anything
cover,
like that.
no, because it really comes out, for lack of a better term, like pudding when it
Right,
comes out of the.
right. Okay,
out of the
gotcha.
truck.
Thank you.
So maybe just for clarification, I agree that 3A states that Lyon County has to meet the federal and state conditions, but we don't want to add anything in there that, I don't see where they have to give us the report to prove that it met it. And maybe that's what I was missing. And so you're saying functionally, though, that's what they do when they come, they have to give you the report that shows it's.
And it's, yeah, they submit them over to our environmental group on a quarterly basis, and if we don't get those, we don't accept their sludge. I mean, it's as simple as that.
So we don't need any further, this is good enough? I just like to protect us,
I get it.
that's all. I can ask, Learned Hand, is that his nickname for
Learned Hand.
today?
Learned
I just
Hand,
want to
what do
make
you say
sure
about
that
that?
3A is sufficient, that we don't need to add the condition that if we don't receive the reports as required, Carson City will not accept the.
So I'm taking a look at that provision in 3A here. It's my opinion that although that language is perhaps not as specific as some of those provisions you're suggesting here on the record, I think that's probably sufficiently broad to empower Carson City and the landfill to reject anything that would not meet those federal standards. Now, of course, I wouldn't have any legal objection to providing additional detail and additional standards. And so I wouldn't have any concern either way, I guess is what I'm saying on the record.
Has this been through Lyon County already?
The staff has looked at it, they've gone through their board, and they're willing to accept.
They're having a board meeting this morning. Is that where it's up?
No, it'll be at their next one.
Okay, all right. Other questions? See, I got Supervisor Bunkowski.
One of my concerns with providing more specific language, I don't want to back us into a corner where we don't have some flexibility to make decisions. So I would just say, recommend keeping that in mind. If we are going to change the language, let's make sure that it's broad enough that it gives us flexibility for potential upcoming changes and isn't so strict that, or so narrow that it causes more problems than it solves.
I think that, taking that into consideration, which I think is definitely a valid point, Supervisor, I think one of the suggestions I might have on the record is perhaps to expand that a little bit to say specifically that Carson City can exercise the reasonable discretion in determining whether or not, that type of waste would meet the federal and state requirements. So that still provides that degree of latitude without also putting us in a corner where we're citing to very specific regulations and rules.
Okay. Laura, your light's still on. You want more?
Oh, sorry. No, I'm just saying I could live with the fix. I just want to protect Carson City in case somebody comes in, looks at the waste and says, hey, this doesn't work. And you're like, well, that came from Lyon County. Anyway, I just want to protect us, so.
All right.
I like his suggestion.
So do I. All right. All right. Other comments or questions of Mr. Cooley? Saw Mr. Stuckey roll around up there. Somebody need a question of Mr. Stuckey? Okay, I don't see it. All right. Motion's in order.
I can try it.
I got it.
You got it?
I move to authorize the mayor to execute the interlocal agreement with the additional language to be proposed by the DA's office on 3A.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on a motion discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried, unanimous. Don't be a stranger, Rick. All right. Okay. All right. Let's see, where am I now? School zones. And I have a disclosure here. We'll take up item 14, Bravo. This is regarding school zones. Supervisor Bunkowski?
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. I have an ownership interest in a retail strip center located in an area proposed to be designated as a school zone. However, the designation of the school zone affects other properties as well and any benefit or detriment to my interest as a property owner is not greater or less than similarly situated persons. I make this disclosure in the interest of full transparency, but because my independence of judgment is not materially affected as a result of my status as a property owner, I will be participating and voting on this matter.
Any other disclosures? Okay, hearing none. Lucia,
Thank
tell
you,
us what's
Mr.
happening here. How'd this get started? Who started the ball rolling down the hill on the school zones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Board. Lucia Maloney, Transportation Manager. So this item was brought to staff's attention about 2 years ago when we received a citizen inquiry about a lone school zone sign over on West Musser. Staff went out there to look at the sign, and it turns out it was a remnant school zone sign from the old Martha Glazier Elementary School? Gleason Elementary School, excuse me, which was demolished in 2005. So staff started looking into it, and it became clear rather quickly that over the years, most likely unintentionally, due to students' travel patterns and drop-off patterns, folks have adjusted the school zone signs. One school no longer even exists, and it was brought to our attention that we needed to take a look and clean this up. So there was a stakeholder working group that was convened in January of 2019. In attendance were members of the school district, the Carson City Sheriff's Office, members of our local bicycle and pedestrian advocacy group, and others. And we discussed the school zones and really what made sense for Carson City today. This has been sort of a low priority as not a lot of folks, typically keep school zone designations in mind. But as staff resources permitted, we've developed the proposed school zones, which you see in the packet today. We had these independently evaluated by an outside transportation planning firm who also provided some recommendations based on best practices for how school zones are established today. I included as Exhibit B a map of the proposed school zones. You'll note the highlighted yellow are the school zones that exist today, and the blue are the proposed school zones for you. One school zone in particular that I'll note is that there previously had been designated a school zone on William Street for the high school. Staff have recommended removing that. We have never signed that to staff's knowledge as a school zone, and the sheriff's office had concerns about if we were to redesignate it, would we put up signs, put that as 15 miles an hour on William Street, and then would we be creating maybe unnecessary traffic hazards or backups during those times? So staff's recommendation was to undesignate that portion on William Street from a school zone at this time. And then after the William Street project, we can revisit and determine if it's appropriate at that time to redesignate or at any time in the future. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss further at your request. Thank you.
Questions of Lucia? Stacy?
Just a quick one. If I'm not mistaken, the high school at one time was not zoned for a school zone at all. There was no reduction in the speed limit. I think it might have been signed for a school zone, but there wasn't a reduction in speed limit. Did that get discussed at all during your?
So the portion on William Street was officially designated by the board in the 1992 package, which was the last time it came, just that yellow portion you see on the map. However, the portion, down Solomon in front of the high school was never designated. I apologize, I can't say for certain the specific one, but there are areas in town where there are school zone signs in areas that are not designated. So there may or may not have been a sign on Solomon at some point in the past, but staff are looking to correct all that.
Well, there's definitely a sign there now, but what I'm saying is there wasn't for a period of time.
That's likely.
And the other question I have is it the intention of you to sign these with passive signs or active signs? And by that, I mean the flashing light signs.
That's a great question. So staff really like we have some solar panel signs that are fairly affordable that do the sort of flashing, how fast are you driving when you drive past. Those also collect speed data for every vehicle that passes, which is helpful for us for evaluating policy and working with the sheriff's office. So as far as our budget will go, we're looking to do those where appropriate. There are some school zones on some minor approaches where that really wouldn't make sense, where we would just do the kind of standard school zone sign. But approval today would give us enough time to do this, in advance of the school year. And we are also in discussions on whether we want to, in some strategic locations, deploy those changeable message signs that says change in travel pattern ahead when school starts, just to make sure everyone's aware, coordinate with the sheriff's office to give warnings and not tickets right away. And so we're hoping to kind of roll that out appropriately.
Okay, and one last question I have that was posed to me, was the accuracy of the sign in relationship to the activity of the school. And who monitors that, who regulates that? There are frequently instances, in fact, during this COVID process, we had an instance where school zone signs were still on and flashing when the schools were not open. And so the comment that I received was, it would be nice if that were accurately reflected, whether it was a half day or whatever the case may be, and who's responsible for doing that?
That's a great question. It's sort of multi-pronged, but the location of the signs, we're hoping to, with this effort, fix it, right? Align it with the edge of the school zones and move those signs and correct those to make them correct. With regard to the timing of the school zone signs, that's something that comes through me, through my group for approvals. We get a lot of requests, it's daylight savings time, it's almost daylight savings time, it's minimum day. And so we just have to balance those requests and try to keep them standard. At the last Regional Transportation Commission meeting, they heard an item where staff have developed and approved and rolled out a speed limit policy for implementation of speed limits. A component of that was standardization of the school zones at 15 miles an hour. So that will help us, in conjunction with this project here, standardize that as 15 miles an hour, sign it correctly, and enforce it. With regard to the times, I think we're always going to have some back and forth, but we coordinate really well with the school district and try to be responsive to those requests.
Other questions, Lucia? Lucia, I have just one. Could you bring your map out on the middle school zones? From Ormsby Boulevard down to Bordewick Bray, the actual school, is there a change in the speed limit? I mean, I've been told that we have a speed limit of 15 around the middle school. Then it seems to maybe go to 25 and then go back to 15 a little later before it hits there. Is that right or wrong?
You are very astute, Mr. Mayor. So in today's climate, there is and it's sort of an odd gap, right, between the middle school and the elementary school. And staff in the sheriff's office, we've had a hard time kind of implementing consistent policy right there. Even though, as you'll see on the map, it is designated that whole stretch of King Street. So as part of this project, we're looking to fill that gap, sign it correctly, and help the sheriff's office enforce speeding so that during school zone times, the speed limit will be 15 all the way down that stretch.
Good, thank you. All right. You want a trivia question?
Bring it on.
On the Gleason School, there's a vacant lot behind the Gleason School to the north. You know what that lot used to have? That was where we had school lunch. There was a building there. Just a little history of Carson. I ate some pretty bad sandwiches there.
He's got memories.
Good memories. All right, let's take a motion then. Motion? Somebody want to make a motion?
I move to adopt resolution number 2020 R14 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the motion discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you, and thank you for taking this project on, because there are a lot of people who, it's time to do this, so good job, Lucia. All right, let's take up, I got the voting. Who? Tamar, you didn't? 5-0. 5-0, you, okay, great, all right. All right, all right.
It's catching up faster lately.
It's, all right, let's take up the next agenda item. This is discussion on second reading for an ordinance amending Title 21 of the Carson City Municipal Code to impose a 5-cent per gallon diesel tax. This is on second reading. We've had some comments, I believe, written comments. I think there are 2. Maybe I missed that. Are there any other public comments since the first reading? Anybody? Okay, questions regarding this? We'll take a motion then.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2020-7.
There's a motion. Second. There's a motion and a second by Mr. Barrett. On the motion, discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I might.
Go.
We heard from one of our constituents earlier who said that Mr. Bonkowski and I should not talk about chastising voters. I'm not going to chastise him for using this forum for his public comment while he's running for office. I did the same 4 years ago while I was running for office. I would only say to him, or to the public who's listening who might agree with him, that as Edmund Burke once said, your representative owes you not his industry only, but his judgment. And he betrays instead of serving you if he sacrifices it to your opinion. I have no problem with what the gentleman said, although I did not know him as Mo before this. But Maurice, on this issue, as I say about the First Amendment, has every right to be wrong. The First Amendment allows him to have his opinion, it allows me to have my opinion, and it allows everyone else to have their opinions. The truth of the matter is, I could have elicited comments from our transportation manager about how woefully underfunded our road system is in this city. I have advocated for roads since I ran for office and all the time I've been in office. I will be voting for this, and should the voters remove it, that is their opinion and their right, but I will be here to advocate for better funding of our roads. As I said on a different issue 2 weeks ago, Field of Dreams says if you build it, they will come. And I say of government, if it builds it, it will probably not maintain it. Now, we've done a good job of trying to maintain everything, but our roads are woefully underfunded. Thank you.
All right. Further questions or comments on this issue? I don't see any. This is on second reading. Somebody want to try a motion?
We have a motion and second.
Okay. Who made the motion? Sorry. And who seconded it? John. Okay, on the motion, further discussion? Okay, doesn't say, on the motion, on the regular motion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay?
No.
Okay. All right. Lucia, I have one question. I know it's not particularly germane. You know when let this one go. I'll talk to you offline. Don't worry about it. There's another topic. All right. All right, let's now take up 14, nope. We're going to recess as the board now. I have to give up the gavel? Oh, no. All right, we're going to recess temporarily as the Board of Supervisors, and we're going to hand the gavel over to Supervisor Bagwell, who's the Chair of Redevelopment Authority, to take us through redevelopment. Lord, here you go. Here you go.
Okay. I'm going to call to order the Redevelopment Authority. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Giommi. Member Kroll,
Here.
Member Bonkowski, Member Barrett. A quorum's present.
Thank you. Desi, do we have any phone-in public comment?
I see no public comment, Madam Chair.
Okay, nope. I'll give it just a few extra seconds in case someone phones in. Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll move on to agenda item.
Wait a minute, I have public comment.
Oh, here we go.
I have
Mr. Mayor, public comment
I
for
have public
Redevelopment
comment.
Authority, go.
Let me see here. Hang
Oh,
on
he
a
thought
minute.
he had something in the mail?
I
Okay,
got something in the mail I need to,
read in.
where was it? Hang on a second.
No problem. We got time.
Has everybody looked at the Sunset Magazine, the recent one that came out in June? Did you look at it, Mark?
Yes, I did.
All right. Carson City is one of 5 communities in the United States being complimented for its art and culture programs. Well done. Okay, and that's, let's see. Yeah, that's public comment. Okay, that's it. All right.
Thank you. That was a good comment. Okay, we will move on to agenda item 18A, which is discussion and possible action concerning a recommendation for expenditures for 2021 for the redevelopment fund for art programs. Mr. Salinas, are you here to take us through this item?
Good morning, I am. Nice to see everyone here in person. Mark Salinas, Arts and Culture Coordinator for the record. I'm here in front of you today to present the Cultural Commission's recommendations for an allocation of $17,197 from the Redevelopment Revolving Fund for special arts and culture events for this next upcoming fiscal year. We had 4 applicant organizations this year, which is a drop from last year. These applicants are organizations that have been around a bit longer, and I think they have more infrastructure to be able to navigate with uncertainty some of the upcoming events this fall. This grant is a reimbursable grant, meaning that upon 30 days after the event, there is paperwork as well as a report, as well as images that they send us to document the event. We use those images and quotes and statistics for promoting the grant itself and for other internal opportunities to make grants. So the Cultural Commission decided that should there be a large gap between what was allocated for funding and what the actual event is, that we would reconvene publicly to address that, any differences in scoring as it reflects the funding. Applicants reach out to us with an ask. It's under $5,000. There's a cap for each organization. The Cultural Commission scores these applications, and the result of that score times the asked amount is the allocated, or is the recommended funding amount. There is a balance, as you can see, of $7,803, and it's anticipated the Cultural Commission would make a recommendation this fiscal year for events once we have a clear understanding of what the environment's going to look like. Are there any questions I can?
Does anyone have any questions,
For
Mr.
answers to?
Salinas? No? Okay, there's no questions, then I'll accept a motion.
I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the expenditure of $17,197 as recommended by the Cultural Commission.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll move on to the final public comment for the Redevelopment Authority. Desi, do we have anyone on the line?
There is no final public comment, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll wait again just a few seconds in case someone's trying to call in. Okay, seeing no further public comment, then I will adjourn the Redevelopment Authority and give you that.
It's better over there than here. All right, let's now take up item 22 alpha. This is a possible action discussion regarding proposed resolution authorizing, we just did that one we're going to do it on this side. Authorizing the expenditure of $17,197 for the fiscal year 2021 redevelopment revolving fund to support various arts and culture special events as an expense incidental to the carrying of the redevelopment plan. This requires a 2/3 vote of the Board of Supervisors. So as we take this up, we'll entertain all the comments and discussion that was held during the original agenda item that the Planning Commission held, incorporate those by reference here. Is there further comments or anything? Okay, we'll entertain a motion to approve the expenditure of $17,197 for from the fiscal year 2021 revolving fund for redevelopment.
I move to approve resolution number 2020-R-15.
I move to approve resolution number 2020-R-15. My mic wasn't on.
All right.
Second.
There's a motion and a second, a couple seconds on a motion discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous by more than a two-thirds vote, okay. All right, let's take up to item 22. Bravo, and Supervisor Bunkowski, you want to?
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I am a partner in the real estate brokerage firm of NAI Alliance Carson City. In that capacity, I currently represent the three principals of Silver Oak Development Company in their roles as principals of another business entity involved in a different project. However, because I have a continuing and substantial relationship with those individuals, I have a disqualifying conflict on items 22B and 22C, and I will not be participating or voting on these two items.
All right, other disclosures? So Brad, that was 22B and 22D?
B and C.
B and C, okay. I got it. All right,
Mayor, may I present 22B and 22C together?
put it all at once, that's fine.
Thank you. This is a request to amend the development agreement and to amend the planned unit development. The plan is on page 402 of your packet. These will be two separate actions or two separate agenda items. On September 16, 1993, the Silver Oak planned unit development was approved. The original development agreement was approved on January 6, 1994. So Silver Oak's been around for a while. The development standards for the PUD are included in the development agreement and referred to as variances. So that's a bit different than what we do now. It's unusual to house the development standards for a PUD in a development agreement, but back in the early 90s, that's how things were handled with the Silver Oak PUD. In the PUD, the original PUD, in the development agreement, and on the tentative map are 4 cluster housing areas called BB, CC, and DD. For each cluster housing area per 2.2 of the development agreement, the maximum number of units are identified for each block. These blocks are allowed to be developed with a final map utilizing the maximum number of units with building types of zero lot line, townhome, common walls, and similar units. Per the development agreement, the maximum lot size is 4,000 square feet. The development agreement also discusses lot coverage limitations, maximum height, and setback requirements. The boundaries of these cluster areas are on the tentative map. The applicant is proposing to modify the boundaries of Block DD to expand it by 0.94 acres into the open space area, as well as to modify the development standards for Block CC, DD, and EE. Block BB is already developed. The applicant is proposing the changes proposed are in your packet on pages 406 through 407. That's where they're redlined. The attachment A, which is attached to the ordinance on page 393, has the final language. Given there's no increase in unit counts, the impacts will not be any different than originally anticipated. Also, these areas are surrounded primarily by golf courses or vacant land, so there will be minimal impacts to any residents. In considering the modifications, we need to look at the municipal code 1707-005 and 1709-050. The Planning Commission reviewed each of the findings vis-a-vis the requested modifications and was able to make all of the findings in the affirmative. At their meeting of April 29, 2020, the Planning Commission did conduct the public hearing, and they voted to recommend approval of both the amendment to the development agreement and the amendment to the PUD based on the ability to make the required findings in the affirmative. I believe Louis Carriola with Manherd and Mark Turner with Silver Oak are on the phone. They're the applicant. I went fairly quickly, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Questions of Ms. Sullivan? Anybody? I don't see any questions.
Louis is here from Manhard, and no, we don't have much to add or anything to add to public presentation.
Okay. Anybody else? I don't see any. At the risk of going forward, I'm going to say, let's take a motion on 22. Charlie?
I move to introduce on first reading Bill number 108.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on a motion discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, carried.
One abstention.
One abstention. Okay, let's take up 22 Delta, this is a companion matter?
There hasn't been a vote on 22B.
What?
We need a vote on
Did.
22.
We
You just did
did.
C.
No, we did B.
You voted on C. The mayor called C.
No, I did 108. Oh, Bill 108.
There was no vote on B. Thank you.
Oh, I made the motion on B, so I'm
Oh.
sorry.
All right, let's get this straightened out then, so the
I'll
record.
just do it again. On 22B, I move to introduce on first reading Bill number 108.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the motion, the new motion. The other one we'll assume has been pulled. On the new motion, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried with one
B as in
abstention.
boy, 22B is Bill 108. C is 109.
All right.
So that was an action on 22B, and now we're looking for for a motion on 22C, is that correct? Right.
Yeah, now we'll do the next
Okay.
one.
All right, 22C, anybody want a further discussion on 22C?
Nope, I got it. I move to introduce on first reading Bill number 109.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second on the motion, discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. There's one abstention, 4 yes, 1 abstention, okay? Now, let's
Now we're on D.
take up. Okay, you gotta help me out here, board.
We're on 22D.
22 Delta, yeah. All right, because 22C is okay, just do 22 Delta. You want to add anything on this one? Hope?
No, the staff report can stand for on its own. Dan Stuckey is here representing the applicant if there's any questions.
Good morning, Mayor. I was just going to give a brief update, if you're willing, on this project and kind of the next steps and how it's moving along.
We're willing, don't worry.
Okay. Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director for the record. So, of course, this is just the zoning map amendment, but obviously this site will be having affordable housing is the goal for the site. Staff has been working with Palaseek, who, we went through the RFP process. The award was given to Palaseek. They're currently, they recently hired an architect to advance their preliminary design. Soon they will be going through the major project review process at the city, so the project is moving forward. And then we will have, of course, a lot line adjustment after this, as there's the potential for a future fire station EOC for the parcel to the east that would be formed by that lot line adjustment. There will be one of the, as far as there was questions, public wanting to know what's going on with this project, an opportunity to comment. You'll remember that the board did direct the Palaseek to have a public outreach component. Palaseek is very aware of that, so there will be, I think they're trying to they want to go through the major project review process and then have that public outreach after that. And of course, with COVID, there might be, they're figuring out ways that they can make that happen. And then staff will, as in the RFP and directed by the board, there will be a development agreement, and that will really lay out kind of how this project, the conditions and limitations of the project. So that will be when it will come back to the board next after this. So I just wanted to provide that update for you as well as the public on that.
Planning Commission, what was their decision?
At its meeting of April 29th concerning the zoning map amendment, they voted 7-0 to recommend approval.
All right. Further questions of either Hope or Dan? Go.
Just a quick comment. As you work with them, the only comment that I've gotten from someone is an adjacent property owner, and just you can relate to them that screening and repair of that fence is going to be important. And like other projects that we've done where there's close proximity to existing properties, they've done some mitigation, the developer has. So it's just something that I think they should really consider.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, at the Planning Commission meeting, they did receive public comment from the area to the north of the subject property, from property owners in that area. And Mr. Stuckey was clear about the public outreach process that will be involved, and that the public will be notified before any approvals, and so on and so forth. So clearly, the public will be invited to participate in the review of this, and that was made clear at the Planning Commission meeting.
Yeah, I think we all got that one, Stacy. It's a good comment. All right. Any other comments or questions? All right, we'll entertain a motion to approve this planning committee. I think it's, the actual motion is to approve the
A
planning
bill.
commission?
Bill.
It's
The
the
bill.
introduction of an
Right,
ordinance.
okay, go.
I got it. I move to introduce on first reading Bill number 110.
Second.
On the motion, discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried, okay. Let's take up the last one under 22. This is 22 Echo. Second reading related to improvement districts, establishing provisions to levy downtown neighborhood improvement district assessment for fiscal year 2021 for the maintenance of the downtown streetscape enhancement project. Hope you're doing this one, right?
It's a second reading, so I'm not prepared to present, but, and Lee Plemmel's not able to be here if they're,
Let's see what happens. Hang on. All right. We have any questions or comments about this?
Can we just confirm that there have been no changes?
City manager, any changes to this or Hope?
I don't believe there's been any
No
changes.
changes? All right. From first reading? Okay. Everybody understand what's going on here? We had, on these, we have two readings, first reading and second reading. And we've done a first reading on this one already. Took it up, okay. We'll entertain a motion then to approve. We just did.
I can make the motion.
Go.
I move to adopt ordinance 2020-6.
There's a motion and a second. On the motion, discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. All right. Let's go to 23, the Board of Supervisors. You ready to do this? We're waiting for, do you want to take a break while we get people over here?
Yeah, we could take a short break. Yeah.
Let's take a little break until we get some health folks over here. So we'll be in recess for 10 minutes. going to bring the meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order on item number 23 alpha. This is possible action, discussion and possible action regarding directives and recommendations concerning Carson City departmental and staff functions in Carson City as a consolidated municipality in relation to the exercise of emergency powers pursuant to NRS chapters 244 and 414 and Carson City Municipal Code Chapter 602 for the purpose of ensuring the health, safety, and welfare in Carson City in response to the global coronavirus pandemic. City Manager.
I just have a few things before I'll turn it over to Jeannie. Once again, all the city offices are open, but we're still encouraging people to do as much as they can online or over the phone. The library is opening Monday. They'll have reduced hours from 1 to 6, Monday through Friday, and they're still doing the curbside pickup Monday through Friday from 10 to 12. The MAC is opening tomorrow. And the pool and the splash pad in McFadden Plaza and the community center will all be opening on June 8th with, with limited, hours and occupancy and all that. And then the only other thing, we just heard from the Porter Group, good news for businesses. Congress passed the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act of 2020. And this will provide more flexibility and relief for the borrowers, and it extends that program through the end of this year. And the president should be signing that into law soon.
Okay.
That's all I had.
Edie, tell us what's been going on over in your shop. And thanks for putting all the hard work in, you guys. Go.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Jeannie Freeman for the record. Just want to provide you with a little bit of update on what's been happening over at Carson City Health and Human Services. As of last night, we have 44 total positive cases in the Quad County region. 16 of those are active in Carson, and we're monitoring an additional 137 people who are close contacts. So that's part of that contact monitoring process or contact tracing process that we go through so that we can ask those people to stay isolated in quarantine and watch themselves for symptoms and stuff as well. The call center continues to be busy. We end up with 50 to 70 calls a day. And people are asking all kinds of questions. They want to know where testing's available. They want to know if they can be tested if they don't have symptoms. And we've actually opened that up. So similar to what other jurisdictions have done, we now are testing anybody, whether they have symptoms or not. We do have priority for those who are symptomatic and those who are close contacts to somebody who was positive. And then we fill in our spots with those who are asymptomatic. We also began expanding our community-based testing for our asymptomatic drive-through events. We did one this past week where we did 187 up at Station 12 up in Douglas County. And on Tuesday, June 9th from 8 to 11, we'll be doing one at Carson High School.
Where are the tests that you can ask in Carson City? Are you actually testing at Health and Human Services, or where are you testing in Carson?
So for those who are symptomatic and those who are close contacts of those who are positive, we are testing at the health department. And then we have a certain number of places each day, slots that we can fill each day. And if we don't have enough people who are symptomatic or close contacts of those who are positives, then we fill them with people who are on a wait list who call into the COVID hotline. And we fill them in so that we have a maximum number, and we're utilizing our nurses to the maximum capacity each day.
So there's a wait list. If somebody's not, they don't believe they're asymptomatic, they don't have the virus, but they just want to get checked because they want to double check themselves, where would they go call you and get on the list, or what would they do?
Yeah, they call the COVID hotline that's been in place the whole time, and they can make sure that they end up having, they can get put on the wait list. Usually they might just be on that wait list for maybe a day, maybe 2 to the most. But that's also why we're expanding these community-based testing events so that we can run people through who may or may not have symptoms, who are just curious about what they're doing. And the test that we do is the nasal swab. So we're doing, it's called the PCR. And so it just tells us whether or not.
Goes up in your brain?
Yeah, it tickles your brain. I'm teasing. We actually had a staff member who was tested this morning, and so that she could document what that process was like. And she said it wasn't as bad as everybody makes it out to be. So it goes up both nose, nostrils, and it tests, and that's how we're able to tell. But it just tells you whether or not you have the virus or you're infected with the virus at that point in time. But people, we've had a lot of comments on social media asking us why we're still doing testing. Who cares about COVID anymore? It's kind of the phrase we don't want out there. And Well, we care because we want to make sure that we're able to identify those who may be asymptomatic in our population. And that's also why we're doing these testing events, because if we can find those who are asymptomatic and we can get them isolated before they become symptomatic, before they may be shedding the virus more in our community, that's important for us to help make sure that we can mitigate and prevent there from being further spread. So it's another tool that's there. And we're asking the public to help us with this. We really need them to be tested. We want them to be tested. We want to help our communities be safe. So Tuesday, June 9th from 8 to 11 will be at Carson High School, and anybody can come and be tested. There's no insurance cost. It's completely free. There's nothing that you need to do other than you say, I want to be tested, and you drive up and we fill out the lab slip and we fill out some information and we take the sample and we send it to the lab, and when we get your results, we notify you whether it's negative or positive. Go ahead, sir.
How are you doing on, or how are we doing as a community on social distancing and masking? If you know, what's your instinct tell you?
So we don't have really that data yet because, as you know, last Friday was the beginning of phase 2 opening. So the next few weeks, when we start seeing the data come in, it'll help us identify whether or not our behaviors are actually if we're seeing the results of our behaviors and being able to see whether or not people are wearing face coverings or whether or not they're doing social distancing and that type of thing. It's going to be really difficult to say because, as you know, there's a lot of things that are happening in our society right now that are outside of COVID. And we have more industry that's opening even today, and we have social unrest from other issues that are occurring within our society. And so when you look at that, you're not going to be able to really identify and say, we can point to that and say that it's because of that or because of this. It's a combination of things. And so we're going to continue to encourage that social distancing, encourage continuing to follow the governor's directives about large group gatherings. I know that was opened up to 50 people, and doing that social distancing and wearing those face coverings. But again, it's understanding that face coverings are about you protecting people from you. It's not about you necessarily getting protected from other people. So when we wear a face covering, if I have one on in public, it's because I'm doing it for you to keep you protected from me. And so it's an element of our social fabric that's there. And I have heard anecdotally from multiple businesses that there are people who don't want to go into businesses that are requiring face coverings from their patrons and so forth. And businesses are having tough decisions to make. They're having those conversations and they're having to decide. And that's a tough place to be when you've been closed for a while. And do you make it a requirement? Do you make it a suggestion? How does that look? So we certainly have seen some of those challenges being faced by our industries here in the community.
Brad, go, jump in.
One of the data points that I look at, Jeannie, to try to determine how the virus is going here locally is the number of active cases on a daily basis, because we have that data going back to the very beginning, and that has not changed in probably close to 2 months. It's ranged between 40 and 50 active cases in the Quad County region, not just Carson City, but the Quad County region. And so I would think as businesses start to open up, as crowds are allowed to get larger or social gatherings are allowed to get larger, that's going to be the first place that we're going to see it, because we're going to start seeing more positives and they will start to outnumber recoveries. What are your thoughts on that? Am I off base on that, or is that, in your opinion, a good indicator that we're either doing it right or that we're starting to not do it right?
Sure, thank you for the question. So based on the science that's out there, it doesn't need to be my opinion, but based on what we look at, as Dustin mentioned last time when he was here, we do look at the daily numbers, but it's more important for us to look at the trend over the week of what's going on, because if you look at daily, it looks, we're stable, but if you look at their trends, we tend to be going down. Is it possible that we're going to see more active cases on a daily basis? Sure. I think there's another piece of that story, though, as we mentioned last time when we were here a couple weeks ago. What are those primary cases and what are those secondary cases? So those primary cases being ones that are new, that we can't really connect to anything else. And then what are our secondary cases, those that might be connected to another case? So If we have a family of 4 living in a household and one person tests positive, that first person might have been a primary case. We can't identify really what else they're connected to. They picked it up in the community. But the other 3 folks in that family might contract that illness. They're considered secondary cases. But if you look at our daily count, then it looks like there's this big bump in those cases. But what is that connected to? And we talk about another statistic out there. It's called an attack rate. An attack rate is, when you have that connection, how frequently or what's the risk of you actually contracting that disease. And we find that in many families, we're seeing attack rates of 90 to 100%.
Say that again?
We're seeing in families and households that are sharing living space that we're seeing attack rates of 90 to 100%. Because what we find is that family members are maybe in a space that's too small that allows them to actually be able to isolate themselves from the rest of their family members, multiple people living in a small confined area, or they may have already been exposed to one another before they were able to be identified as being positive and be able to isolate themselves. So we find that in family situations, that becomes important. We're still seeing that spread within the workplace and folks that are coming to work sick and then that disease that's spreading and stuff. So the social conscientiousness of what we need from our patrons and our residents and so forth is, if you don't feel well, stay home. If you, and when I say don't feel well, a lot of times people are considering, well, I don't have a cough, I don't have a fever, I'm not having shortness of breath. Those were the early on symptoms that we're looking at. Those symptoms have actually expanded. They talk about headache, they talk about a new loss of taste or smell, they talk about GI disturbances. So all of those things can be early signs that there's something that's not right. And so if you aren't feeling well, or as I say in a very scientific way, if you're feeling a little wonky, stay home. Don't be around other people.
Stacy.
Jeannie, you talked about the primary contacts and to Brad, I guess to Brad's question and really to your point, that to me seems like one of the best indicators of community spread is tracking that primary contact, because if those numbers are going up significantly, then those are each new cases that are coming from somewhere within the community. So is that some information that we can get? Are you designating each case as a primary or a secondary? Or are there some that are in question? So that's the first question. And then secondarily, is that data that we can get in that summary that you're preparing for us, just so we can see maybe a trend line on primary cases, what that looks like, whether it's going up or down? So that's my question.
Sure, thanks for those questions. Yes, we are actually, Dustin has been going back to all of our cases, all the way back to case 1, to really do some additional analysis. It's not something that you go into a case log and you say, oh, quickly, that's a primary case and that one. It takes a lot of investigations, and we're able to kind of do this tracking process. And some of the things that we find too is when we have cases that are in other counties that are connected to cases that we have, and how are those going. So it takes a little bit of time. It is something that we are preparing. It is something that we are continuing to look at. It's really premature for us when we get a positive case that drops into our lab results for us to look at that person and ask them a few questions and then identify it quickly as a primary or as a secondary. Secondary is definitely easier if we can connect it to something else, but primary is something that we say, well, that's tentative until we're able to do more of that investigative process. Our first goal, obviously, when we get a positive test is to notify that person that they're positive, get them isolated in quarantine, find their close contacts and so forth. But there is that backside that we're doing, and Dustin is working on that and preparing that. And that is also information that we continue to share with our partners, but then it's also something that we're looking to share with the state as well. Yesterday, the state epidemiology office asked us to report additional data on our cases. So now we're going back all the way to case 1 and looking at those case notes again and trying to get some additional information so that we can continue to build that picture of what's been going on in the state. But yeah, it is what we are looking at.
Is the state doing this thing? Is the state doing cases 1 and 2? Are they breaking it down like that? Category 1 or category 2?
To be honest, sir, I'm unsure how they're doing that analysis of what they're doing. This is something that we continue to report and the information that we continue to
We
want
reported
to.
to the state, though, in that format.
In an informal way, we've been doing that. It hasn't been something that's been formally requested that I'm aware of at this point in time. But I do know that, I'm not sure if you watched the press conference that Mr.
did.
Cage held yesterday.
Oh, wait a minute. Say that again. What happened there?
So yesterday, Mr. Cage, who is our state COVID response and recovery lead out of the governor's office, he held a press conference yesterday, and he had Julia Peak from the Division of Public and Behavioral Health and Dr. Mark Pandori from the State Public Health Lab. And they held a press conference talking about what the process is and what the goals are and what the direction is that the state is headed in, and some of these efforts with the community-based testing and doing more data collection around the cases and stuff that have been happening across the state so that they can build that picture. I think what's really hard for people a lot of times to understand is that as a new disease, we don't know what we don't know. And so sometimes we get to a place and we say, oh, there's something that maybe we should be looking at that. So now we got to go back and look at everything else and start from scratch again and build into that. And everybody's working extremely hard on that. And I would consider our region, I think the steps that our elected leaders took in our communities helped our region be better off on the numbers than some of the other areas of the state. And we have less to go back with, but we do have the understanding that even though we're rural and somewhat suburban in our environments, that we're all still really interconnected. And so we're continuing to look at those cases, and we find more of them interconnected than we would like. And I think that there's sometimes we look at things and go, okay, that person was over here, and then we find somebody else who's positive over here. Well, they work at a second job in the same environment. Did they somehow have contact? And it takes quite a bit of time to do that contact investigation process.
Do we use help from the other three counties in our Quad County group to do tracing, or is that all done out of Carson City?
So it's done out of Carson City Health and Human Services, but the other counties have been assisting. So we have staff who are helping with investigations and contact monitoring from the other counties as well.
Okay.
And then we will have 2 folks that we will be hiring through the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. They should be on board here in the next couple of weeks, that are going to be paid for by the CDC to help us with that contact investigation and monitoring. And then there are other efforts that the state is being put forward, and they're working with NSHE, so the Nevada State Higher Education Group, to get recent grads and students who are in place to kind of be trained up and stuff to be able to help throughout the upcoming months as well.
The last time the governor spoke, maybe he said it or maybe it's just going around, but that we may be going into phase 3 for July 4th.
So when he did his press conference related to, the press conference was canceled, but with the video and with the release of the information, that phase 2 was expected to last at least 2 to 3 weeks. But he said that he wouldn't be making his decision about phase 3 until the data was able to be presented and they were able to look at what was there. Again, based on all kinds of things that are happening around us, I don't have any predictions on that, and I have not heard anything that would change that timeline at this point.
Very good.
Mayor, I can speak a little bit. I was at a conference call with NACO, and I don't know if you joined that call or not, but the governor has put together a LEAP, L-E-A-P task force, which is governmental, state and local government leaders. NACO representatives on that are Commissioner Gocochea from Eureka County and Chair of the Clark County Commission, Marilyn Kirkpatrick. And they're working very hard with the governor's office and with industry to really progress in a safe manner through the phases and set benchmarks, as Jeannie was talking about. And one of the reasons you're seeing expanded community testing across the whole state is because of the CDC recommendations to expand testing of asymptomatic people, to really be able to get a handle, as Jeannie said, on the numbers that are out there, to identify people who are sick before they can sicken large quantities of people. So I just wanted to state that NACO is working very hard, and those two representatives in particular, Dr. Gokchia and Marilyn Kirkpatrick are doing a great job representing the counties, and really doing everything they can to safely get Nevada opened again. And so there really is no benchmark in terms of, as Jeannie said, of when we'd hit phase 3. But being that we just got to phase 2, we've got to see some testing and see how things work related to that. And I think the CDC recommendation is 2% of the population tested. Is that the number that, I'm going from memory, which is not what it used to be, but.
Yes, sir, it's 2% of the population every month.
Right, every month.
Every month.
So really,
And
that's the goal of that, of that task force, is to find ways to get at that 2%. And that 2% includes everything. So someone who is ill and gets tested, that counts. These events that Carson City Health and Human Services has, that Washoe County Health District has, all of those community events, anyone who gets tested counts towards that 2%. And the thought is that the more people you test, the more data you'll have in terms of how widespread the disease is, and catch trends and try and figure out how those phasing impacts affect that, the contamination of that, of the virus.
And that testing also helps us go back to answering what the other questions have been previously this morning, that by doing that testing and identifying those and being able to, it helps us know where we might have, hot pockets or hot zones associated with the disease, or where we might need to be doing some additional efforts, what kind of communications we need to be making sure that we're getting out there, what additional information we need to be able to provide industry. I realize that the public may be concerned and they don't want to test, but we need them to test because it helps us to identify that data and be able to look at those cases and know, is this primary or is this secondary? How far in advance can we catch it and have somebody test positive? Because you will have some people who test positive who never show symptoms. And then you're going to have those that we call pre-symptomatic. We test them when they're asymptomatic, so they don't have any symptoms, but then within a couple days, they start to develop symptoms. And if we caught them when they were still asymptomatic, but they were positive, we don't have the ability at this point to be able to predict how many people we could have kept from getting sick from it, but we do know that it's an effective effort to make sure that we're not having additional spread beyond what that person might have done when they didn't realize that they actually had the disease.
I think the key point about testing is that it really is directly related to our state's ability to progress in the phases.
Correct.
So really, the more people that choose to get themselves tested, whether they're symptomatic or asymptomatic, it helps that process along, and we will get to those phases faster if we get more tests done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the social distancing and things like that, and, the stay at home and stuff is all terribly important. And you probably sense it too, and I think probably all of us in this room can sense it. It gets to the point where, it's almost depressing in a way. And that's what I feel when I get up in the morning and say, why is this happening to us? What can we do? Things of that nature. Because well, let me just leave it like that. But I think, at the end of the day, what I tell myself anyway is, it might be depressing, but we're not going to ever get out of this unless we do the social distancing and masking all the way to the end, and the testing all the way to the end, so we can get out of it and we know where we are. Otherwise, we might get caught in either the twilight zone of in or out, and second, we might get another surge, which none of us want. So, my message to folks is, please try and keep your social distancing and your mask, watch that, because that's our way out of this right now. I know it's a pain to do that. And you see a lot of pictures where people are not social distancing and they're crowding in. I mean, that's just hard. And for our little community, we've done pretty darn well around here. So I just ask, that we bear with us for just a little bit longer, and hopefully we're going to get out of this stuff. Because I think, what you folks are doing, and particularly the Quad County area, that's a smart thing to do, to join together with counties, with your surrounding counties because that's where the virus is going to first go. It's a good move. So I guess, what I'd ask folks, just as a personal matter, but as mayor, is that, the law requires us to do social distancing and it requires masking. It's guidelines anyway on masking. Let's do our best to comply with all those and keep our fingers crossed that we're going to get out of this probably this month, or at least get out of phase. We got to get out of phase 2 anyway and go into phase 3, which is a wider opening. But what are our surrounding counties saying to you about what they're doing there? We have any problems over there in the 3 counties?
No, I mean, our other counties, our partners have been incredible. They've been as supportive as all of you have been, and they're happy that we're all working together as a collaborative Quad County region. That certainly is something that they have found beneficial.
You might bring that up, talk a little bit about how that got started, the Quad County.
Sure. So actually, many years ago, there was agreements with the fire chiefs, and I believe when Supervisor Giomi was still in place, they worked together often across borders, and they collaborated because they knew that resource-wise, not a single one of them had everything that they would need to be able to handle any situation. And so, relying on your neighbors and your friends and building those relationships became really important. When it came to public health preparedness, which has been at Carson City Health and Human Services for quite a number of years, the state medical officer gave CCHHS the delegation of authority to do public health preparedness activities for Lyon and Douglas County, and then a couple years later gave us that delegation of authority for Story County as well. And then that relationship, we've had different changes in staff and so forth. I came into play about almost 3 years ago, I guess a little over 2.5 years ago, as I came from the state when I was doing the trauma registry up there for the whole state. And when I came into the position that was previously occupied by Angela Barossa, I did reach out immediately to the emergency managers that I had been working with and said, hey, we continue to do everything as 4 counties. We have the funding that supports 4 counties. And I'm very sensitive to the fact that in other jurisdictions, people don't want to hear that Carson City is coming in to take over, or Carson City is coming in to do something in their jurisdiction. People are really proud of the counties that they live in. And I made the suggestion, you guys have worked as a quad. Is it possible that we can brand ourselves more as a Quad County effort? And that was accepted, that was appreciated, and we've just kind of been doing that. The 4 emergency managers of these counties in the last 2.5 years have been incredible to work with. It is not usual for public health to be at the table when it comes to emergencies. And it started back when Giomi was as the fire chief, having health be involved. And it has really expanded with Todd Carlini and Chief Fogerson down in Douglas County, and then with the county manager in Story and in Lyon County as well. They have all been great because when we look at what's happening around the state right now with a public health emergency and you get on those calls and you listen, it doesn't seem like emergency management and public health are always talking or even having the same dialogue or in the same room. And they've had us at that table for quite a while now, which has made this not an easier emergency, but the relationships have been established so that we haven't had as many roadblocks as we've been moving forward. And it's been a great partnership. Some of the things that we've done with emergency management and public health preparedness up to this point, all the bleed control kits that we have in all the schools and all the public buildings, that's happened across the 4 counties. The regional adoption of the evacuation tags that we use in our long-term cares and skilled nursing facilities, that's also been a collaborative. Family assistance centers that we've expanded. It started in Carson and we've expanded it to Quad counties. And then what we do each year with the flu vaccination outreach, which will be another effort that is going to be a huge piece this fall, is to have greater encouragement to have more people vaccinated against the flu, because what we're trying to do is to also alleviate and prevent there from being a surge on our healthcare system due to the flu in the midst where we're also going to be dealing with COVID. and stuff. So we want to make sure that we're not burdening our healthcare system. And so there's going to be more of that collaboration that's in place. But again, as you all know, as you are out in the community and you represent your different wards and stuff, relationships are really key to that being in place. And having those relationships that we have with our health officers in each county has been incredible. And I appreciate when somebody gives me a call on the phone and they call me and they say, I heard this, I'm frustrated by it, can you tell me what's going on? I'm glad that they're able to come to me and they're able to come to us and ask those questions, and they feel free to do that, and they feel like they have that relationship that they can do that. It's not personal, it's business, and it's done in a professional way, and it's a good place for us to be right now.
Well, good on you for, I think the Quad County idea, and good on you, Chief. Chief Giomi, good on you too. So, I think that pays dividends in more than just the coronavirus. I mean, because there are funding issues that now come up and things like that, and developing the relationship between our 4 counties. I mean, we get along well now, and I think it's important that we continue to do that. But I think that, when you come in with a group, particularly a local group that somewhat rural counties, that makes a difference to people when they see that, it's not just one county out there crying wolf or whatever they're going to do. So I just think that there's a whole lot of benefit that's, it's been beneficial during the COVID matter, but I think it's going to be even more beneficial, not even more, but it's going to continue to be beneficial as we go through, the health issues that we're going to be going through. So pass on to your folks there again that, these are difficult times, but keep your spirits up, do what we can to get out of this, okay?
Well, I do want to, I thank you. It's an honor to be the face that gets to be in front of you, talking with you about what's going on.
Well, that's no good.
But it's honestly, this isn't possible without the entire team, and that team expands beyond the health department. I can't explain to you how much help we have received from all 4 counties, from Public Works and from IT and from Parks and Recreation, and I mean, just the law enforcement, fire. There has been so much. I'm incredibly proud to be a member of Carson City and their staff, but I'm incredibly proud to be part of the Quad County region as well. It says loads about what people can do when they come together. And when you talk about the funding, one of those pieces that's tied to that funding and how that funding is determined for this region and for Carson is based on the census. And right now, we're in the midst of where we need everybody to finish their census. Making sure that their data is entered and that they're counted becomes important for what this looks like for the next 10 years. Nobody would have anticipated that in 2010, we'd be facing this in 2020. But keep in mind, we were right at the end of H1N1 being in 2009, right? And so we saw that there was that need, and people not necessarily understanding. We're at that cusp again. We need people to make sure that they're counted, and that census is important for these types of things because it does indicate or does dictate the type of funding that comes into this region.
Thank you, Jeannie. Okay. Who? John.
Okay, I'd imagine that because you can't measure what you don't know, it's still tough. But is there any national or statistic on the asymptomatic group? How big is it, in terms of percentage? I mean, that's a tough one, I understand.
Great, I appreciate the question. The asymptomatic, there's information that comes out from the World Health Organization. There's information that comes out from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and other countries. I've seen numerous different articles. I've seen it range that there could be a level that's 20% of people who are asymptomatic. I've seen it go up to 45% of people who could be asymptomatic. There's not any hard, fast congruence right now between all of that. What we do know is that we do have people in the public who are asymptomatic, and Dustin has given that picture before of, the iceberg. The symptomatic and those who are positive are what we see at the tip, but what we don't see underneath is where some of that challenge is. And again, why that testing is important helps us open up our state, and part of that is so that we can identify those who may be asymptomatic before they actually become symptomatic or ever become symptomatic, so that we're able to get them isolated and quarantined before that exposure can be happening as a way of trying to prevent that spread.
Got it, John? Any other questions, Jeannie? As usual, if there's anything you think we should be doing, pass it on to the city manager or just call us. And probably better to go through the city manager, but let us know what you need. Money's tight, but let us know what you need.
Okay. Thank you all for your questions.
Okay, very good. Nancy, anything else on this one?
We're going to have a financial update from our CFO.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I wanted to first talk about CTAX a little bit. I know I send emails to you guys and the directors with a monthly update, but for the public as well. In March, we saw CTAXes decrease, taxable sales decrease by 12.7%. The CTAX distribution that I'm talking about is the actual dollars that we get from the state, and that decreased by 11.3%. Those two percentages never are perfect because of late payers, early payers. They're never perfect, but it's a good indicator of what we expect to happen with the actual money coming in. Now, I'm going to go back to February as well. The February update I gave you was during an item. It wasn't during this COVID-specific item on the agenda. And in February, we saw an increase of 19% in the dollars that actually came in. So during my initial projections back in February, March, I projected we would see almost a 9% decrease in February for CTAX. And that was because COVID was overseas, but it was spreading. And so I thought there might be some fear. That didn't happen. We saw a 19% increase, which is great for the money coming in. It gives us a little more flexibility in April, May, and June. In March, like I said, we decreased 11.3%, and I had projected CTAXes decreasing by 35% in March. So again, it's bad that they decreased, but a far cry from the 35% that I did decrease it. So it gives us more flexibility again for April, May, and June, to the tune of about $1.1 million. We've come in higher than what I projected.
Say that last again, please. Tell me that
So
last.
what I projected to what we actually received is $1.1 million. So we received $1.1 million more than what I projected. For February and March, which will help us for April, May, and June.
So we were close in March and in April. To the guess, it's a guesstimate of how much we're going to lose.
It is. I estimated 35% decrease, but it actually came at 11.3. So, I mean, if you do a quick extrapolation, in March we were closed for, the non-essential businesses were closed for 2 weeks. So if you extrapolate that over a month, you shouldn't see more than a 25-30% decrease at the most for April. And we do expect April to be the absolute worst month because we weren't even in phase 1 until May 9th. So April should be the worst, and we won't know what those numbers are until June. But the 11.3% decrease in March is a fairly strong indicator that we should be okay. I did reach out to a couple of car dealerships that I have a relationship with here in town, and just to see if they would share with me their April sales tax forms. And they did. They understand our situation as well. I was absolutely shocked. One of them actually went up 2% for April. Said cars have been selling like hotcakes. The other one that I discussed went down 15%. It's big, but again, a far cry from 35% decrease. So these are just indicators. It's only 2 companies. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. But, everybody I've talked to does feel that this isn't going to be as bad financially as everybody's predicting, that we should come out of it not good, but okay. I mean, we did get rid of all of our capital So we're still going to have all that deferred maintenance and
Yeah, so Sherry,
stuff.
I understand that when we just look at the CTAX numbers, and we're dealing with February, March, April, May, and June, you know, the picture maybe looks like it isn't going to be as bad as we anticipated, but that doesn't address two potential items. One, that there is a long-term impact to business revenue that will go on far longer than June, which we haven't necessarily budgeted for. We did make an adjustment in the balance of the year numbers, but also the effects of a potential recession that undoubtedly is coming in some form, and also the government entities that are above us that are going to push expenses down onto us. So I just want to note that it isn't all about this little moment in time, that I think that
Absolutely.
there are many other variables out there that we can't see yet that I think are going to have a much bigger impact than the 4-month period that, you know, we've kind of budgeted for.
Well, we budgeted for next year as well, and we did decrease next year's numbers below what we even received in 19. So we have included some of that potential recession and recovery in the fiscal year 21 budget.
Yeah.
So I just want you to be aware, we have decreased, we are anticipating decreases for all of these things you're talking about. And it might be worse than I projected, but so far my projections haven't been too bad, so we'll see. I also looked at other revenues because it's not just the C-tax that this is affecting. So I looked at franchise fees. They're actually looking like they're going to be up about $100,000. People are spending more time at home, more entertainment. Landfill is up by about $100,000. Parks and Rec does look worse than I projected. I projected losing about $150,000, and it looks like it's going to lose about $250,000. Again, they're starting to open up some things in June, so maybe it'll come back a little more than what it's looking like now, but it looks like they're a little worse. And courts look like we're right on the mark. They're still operating and bringing in the fees.
You know, Sherry, I think this, I'll just make a gratuitous statement, and you tell me if it's too gratuitous. But you know, for the last several years, the members of this board have been hot on creating some revenue balance so that when we hit one of these recessions, and I'll never forget Supervisor Bunkowski saying, you know what, if recession's going to come, and about 90% believed him, but 10% of me didn't want to believe him. But you know, without, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about this board, without them doing what they did to save money in the good years, I think we could have been in a worse position than we were. Because now I'm getting concerned that because we did all that, you know, the federal relief says, well, you guys, you know, did so well, maybe you ought to share yours. Or, you know, that you don't need any because you've been good financial stewards. That's what I get. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's what I feel. What do you think?
I think I have already been on some calls with NACO and working with them to lobby the state and let them know we're in a bad position too, as far as all of this COVID situation. And, you know, if they're going to push down more expenses, we're going to have to cut programs. I mean, that's what it boils down to.
Which probably means people.
Yeah, 75% of our budget is salary and expenses. So if we cut programs, it's going to mean cutting jobs.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, my hat's off
But we
to
are
the
working
rest-
with
to the
NACO
four
to try
board
to make
members here about,
sure.
you know, they're pushed to make sure that, you know, we at least we weren't caught flat-footed when this came in terms of reserves of cash, of reserves of money. It's not that we're gonna be able to use that forever, because we're not. We used it this time, but, when I talk to the federal folks, I say, please don't hold it against us, because I hear that, on the federal level, well, the local governments don't need it because they're poor managers of money. That's not the case here. Even though I'm a member of this board, I don't see that as the case. When I read the budget numbers and things like that, I don't see that. So my message back is, don't penalize us for being good stewards either. Don't do that. But everybody's in the same kind of, the federal government's in the same position, we kind of are down here. But let me just say it again, my hat's off to the 4 members of this board for being so hot on creating, not setting up traps where we're going to start losing money, and to start making sure that we're putting money away for these days when we need it, like right now. Okay.
Yeah, it is a kudos to this board, because during the recession, we were around 5% was our fund balance. That's what we budgeted for. And that's low. That's half a month, to get us through expenses. That's half a month. More 8 to 9% is actually 1 month of expenses. So we're allowed via NRS to get to 16% without having 2 months, without having anybody criticize us for having too much fund balance. So we want to get there, and we were, kind of working towards that goal, but, this has kind of put a damper on it. We still have an 8.3% fund balance in that we've budgeted for. So we're reducing capital to try not to mess with that fund balance, but eventually we're going to have deferred capital we're going to have to pay for. We're just kind of pushing costs down the road, so.
The piper always comes.
Yeah, it's true. That's correct.
The piper always comes. All right, further questions of anybody? Sherry? John, I'm sorry. Or Stacy?
I just wanted to ask Nancy, because Sherry brought up the landfill, and we had talked about exploring Sunday hours again, and maybe increasing revenue and through that, just by offering a Sunday service. Sound like a church. Sunday landfill.
I think they're having, I think they would like to do that, but I think they're having a hard time finding staff. We did have, they've lost 3 full-time employees just in the last few months. And we did have actually someone that worked at the pool, one of the lifeguards full-time, went over and was helping over there at the landfill, but then now they're coming back to the pool for that reopening. I will check in again with them and see.
Yeah, maybe at some point in a future meeting, we can have them explore that possibility in terms of what the cost is and whether the cost of opening it outweighs the benefits. We probably should be looking at that, because I know the times I've gone on a weekend, it's very, very crowded, and it might be deterring some people from going. And if that's the case and we can get some revenue from that, then I think it's a good thing, plus providing a service back to the citizens. Because we closed it years ago when, I think we closed it in 2008 during the recession to save money. That was my recollection. And maybe now isn't the time to open it, but I would at least like to have that analysis done.
I'll check in with Rick.
Other questions? John, Supervisor Barrett?
Thank you. First of all, I just want to congratulate Sherry, because she has done a great job for this period. But I also want to echo Brad, because this is going to have a longer term impact. And my reading of it is, nobody knows the future, but that longer term impact is not only going to include potential recession, and we don't know how deep that will be, which will cause its own problems. But we are part of a...
Excuse me, Supervisor Barrett, can you turn on your microphone, please?
In a large country in the world, and the Federal Reserve and the Congress have thrown more money at this than we've ever seen thrown at anything except a war. And the truth of the matter is that down the road, 5 years from now, we will face inflationary problems that we can't foresee very well. So we need to continue to be prudent, as the mayor has been talking about. I was the least prudent of us all because I wanted to do more on roads, but I'm glad you guys outvoted me, even though the truth of the matter is I really do think we need to fix our roads. That doesn't matter now. That's more of a back burner thing. But we're going to face down, and then when we come back, we're going to face, if we come back, I'm sure we will, then we're going to face an up and everything's going to cost more.
Yeah, so, while we're talking about the COVID matter, let me also say, one, thanks to your finance folks for, watching with an eagle eye at what we're doing, and our health department for what they're doing. And it's not lost on me, that we've got cops out here who, as I've mentioned before, when they have to get in the middle of a fight or break something down, they don't know what those people have, if they're sick or they're not sick. And so, a big hats off to the cops and the law enforcement we have, and to our sheriff and all these deputies, because that's been another reason, I think anyway, why, we're not taking a sledgehammer to folks and things like that. We're trying to make things work. We're a small community. We're a community, however. And, my own feeling is that the sheriff and his folks have done an excellent job around here about, making sure that, we don't experience some of the things that are being experienced elsewhere. That's not to say that the First Amendment isn't very important, which it is. So to our staff, who's been working at this, keep working. Your work is appreciated. You may not hear from us all the time, but your work is appreciated because it shows in the numbers. Okay, all right. Sorry for dragging on there. Anybody want anything? Nobody? Okay, I can continue talking then. Oh, they'll all have something. All right, are we ready? You got anything else, city manager?
Nothing else.
All right. Then, Board, are we ready to take a break until 1:30? Huh? Oh, excuse me, sorry. Go, 24, go. Yeah. I don't know if anybody has anything. No, we're on 24.
If you don't mind. At the last meeting, I commented that I wasn't feeling well and I had been tested for COVID. It turns out that I did test positive, and your comment about this being a community is spot on. I can't tell you how many well wishes I got, and I'd just like to thank the community and friends and acquaintances. If I had eaten or drunk everything that people offered to bring me, I'd be 600 pounds. So I got along fine. I get asked what my symptoms were like. It really, for me, was not, certainly not the sickest I've felt, but it does sneak up on you, as Jeannie had mentioned. It started with, for me, it started with fatigue, and I guess I didn't realize till afterwards that that's what it was. And then a temperature, and then some GI issues and dizziness, and of course a cough. But it is sneaky in a way that if you don't pay attention to that cough and a plugged nose and whatnot, you start realizing that you're not breathing as much as you should be. And so it's very easy to see how it can progress in someone who doesn't have a healthy immune system or doesn't have a healthy respiratory system. But all in all, the health department did a good job. It kept us informed and offered help. But you're right, Mayor, it's a great community, and just thank the people who were so kind to me over the last 2.5 weeks or so.
Thank you. We're glad you're back, because gave us a little scare. We're glad you're back, and glad you're okay, back and okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did they give you, I should have asked this to Jeannie, but I ask you, when you were diagnosed, was there any medicine they can give you to knock it down, or you just have to wear through it?
No, there is none. I mean, you hear people talk about all of the medicine and the controversy surrounding all of that, and frankly, anything that I had rather extensive conversations during this. My cousin is a doctor in San Francisco, and internal medicine doctor. We talked a lot about this, and really everything they're doing in hospitals right now is either a clinical trial or experimental. They really, they reach a point where when you're in the hospital, they're throwing stuff at you. They're doing it out of it's you're either going to die or this is going to make you better. They are having some good successes with people who have tested positive, getting plasma transfusions from people who have recovered. So taking the antibodies and doing some transfusions, that helps some people. But it really is just like throwing darts at a wall and trying to get stuff to stick. So no, there is no medication. You just have to get through the symptoms. And you just have to be isolated. And, I think the biggest effect of this whole thing was my dog hates me because she couldn't go on a walk every day. And so every time I moved from one couch to the other, she was like very unhappy with me. But,
Well, I don't
but things
blame
are
her.
back to normal now, so.
I don't blame her.
Yeah, no.
Okay. All right. Anybody else on board reports? No? Okay, we ready to take a break until 1:30? We ready? Manager? All right, we'll be in recess until 1:30 when we have a set time for the Tahoe Western asphalt issue is up. Thanks.